Dolphins Bills will be intriguing just to see what happens to the Dolphins, but they've been exposed.
Yeah, in a sense, right? Because we kind of talked about it the last week. The one like blueprint-ish type thing is if teams were going to start pressing, right? If you were going to disrupt some of that timing, and again, there were still like some plays, and let's like Brendan Staley for as like kind of up and down as a head coach as he's been this year with some of the fourth down stuff. Like he's done a very good job with his defensive game plans. Again, when we go back to like a couple weeks ago, was it against the 49ers when they lost? He was like, I think this was the best defensive game plan we had. And like he was right. And like that still continued to get better. And it was again that against the Dolphins. So they were another team that the press, so they pressed even more than the 49ers did against the Dolphins. And it ended up working. The really the one play that they had where they pressed at the line and gave up is when like Michael Davis fell down and Tyreek Hill had that 60-yard completion. Other than that, especially Davis had 17 press snaps, 6 targets, and it was only that one reception, right? So this is going to be a thing where the Bills can play press a little bit. You look at Dane Jackson right now has the most snaps for any corner in the league in press coverage this year. That's per Next Gen Stats, but not necessarily the greatest press corner. Is giving up 251 yards on 184 press snaps, 11% completion rate over expectation per Next Gen Stats, but 37.5% of those targets were in tight windows. And I think that's kind of the key, right? If you have those tight windows, it's not necessarily something that Tua wants to throw at all the time. And that's kind of where the Dolphins really have to figure out what they're doing, because it's not that these are routes that are like completely clamped down. And they were a little bit to an extent against the Chargers, but against the 49ers, there were still plenty of open windows to throw to. Just the timing was off and everything. Tua was a little unsure of himself. Talked about it last week. He kind of like double clutched more than we had ever seen him in the season. So how they figure what this timing is going to be. Do they run some more like underneath routes? Do they start doing some more shallow crossers instead of what was so good about the Dolphins offense for the entire season is how they could still get the ball out quickly, but push the ball down the field. But now if everyone's going to be selling out, right, for some of those intermediate passes and just clogging the middle of the field, do we start seeing, and not so much of like the 2021 Dolphins offense because that was gross, but like, do we see some of these shorter routes off the RPOs? Do we see some of the take advantage of yards after the catch and some of that? And the push and pull here that we see the Dolphins use, I'm going to be very interested. Like, do we start seeing more of a run game, right? If these linebackers are going to start like bailing out in the middle of the field.
They can't run now.
Right. But like
they can't run. I mean, listen, look at the Dolphins. Look at their schedule up and down. They've scored 21 or more. They've scored more than 21 points against the Texans, the Browns, the Bears, the Lions, and then the Ravens back in that week 2 game. This is it's a Fugazi team, man. It's a Fugazi offense. I think that we all fell for it. We got hooked. They've got 2 elite speed guys, and they've got 2 guys they can scheme for, and the rest of the offense, they have no other contributors. They have no other contributors on the rest of this offense.
Yeah, it is tough. We just gotta. I still kind of believe there is a counter that they can pull off, because I think the coaching staff is smart enough to do.
And then the defense is awful.
Yeah, so they're getting more pressure still. Like the defensive line, there's now a disconnect, right? Because they had so much of we're going to have all of these guys thrown up against the line because we don't really have the 4-man pass rush. So we're going to show all these exotic type of looks before the snap. And then maybe we're going to blitz, maybe we're not, but we're going to do that. We're going to leave our corners out on islands because hopefully we've done enough pre-snap confusion along the line. But now with Bradley Chubb, they do have a 4-man rush, and they're getting home with a 4-man rush. They're getting pressure when they only send 4, but they're still doing all of these kind of exotic type things. And that's leaving their corners, who have not been very good to, a consistent extent, out on islands, and that's kind of leaving them bare all over the place when they could just send a 4-man rush and figure out some more things in coverage. So there's kind of a disconnect now on where they have their strength of the defense and what they've been trying to do all year, especially since Chubb has come into the mix. So that's the other thing. And again, you don't really want to blitz Josh Allen. Although like there's really no right answer to Josh Allen, but it's going to be, this is just kind of really a team right now that needs to really figure out what its strengths are on both sides of the ball and really figure out what this counter is going to be, because what they have been running on for most of the season, we're getting to a point where there's enough film on it and teams are starting to figure it out. I do still have optimism that the offense is going to figure out some kind of counter. I think Mike McDaniels is very smart and will figure out what that is. And maybe it's not as explosive as what this offense was going forward, but I don't think we're going to see like another like 9 of 22 performance. I think we'll see some better offensive production going forward. But again, it's a tough slate of defenses that they have, coming forward. So it's not going to be a completely easy counter either.
Yeah, miserable spot. You go back-to-back West Coast games, short week to Buffalo, where it's going to be cold, and we know that they can play good defense too. Even with the amount of injuries they've had, they've still been game on defense. I mean, it's just real hard. I look at it that this Dolphins team in totality, it's great to get caught in these waves, right? And we're gonna probably talk about the Lions, who are in the midst of the newest wave. But yeah, when you look at it, like you take the 10,000-foot view on this Dolphins team, they can't run, they don't play defense, and they haven't scored against a good defense since the Ravens in week 2.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like that was part of it. They haven't played those really good defenses, but yeah,
and the Chargers are not a good defense. Like that was basically all scheme. They were missing 3 legit starters in that game. They had been getting steamrolled the entire the previous 6 weeks, basically had been getting flooded by way worse teams than the Dolphins. So yeah, I mean it's tough. It's really tough to buy a Dolphin. You feel good like where they're trending, but there still needs to be more here. I think when you just step back and look at everything, they probably were elevated a little too far over that just run of dusting really bad teams.
Yeah. I think so. And again, there was just like so much structurally to really like. And I think because of what they've done in that sense, I still do believe they'll have that counter. I'm very interested to see.
And they're probably still good. You get Green Bay after this, you get the Patriots, and then you close with the Jets at home. So you still are very much live. Like there's no it's not like the end is nigh or anything. But I think when we see them get in, like I don't really see them as a team that's gonna beat 3 really good teams in a row.
Yeah, I think we've maybe seen a ceiling for at least what the long-term aspect of this team is like into the playoffs. Like a couple weeks ago, you probably could have convinced me that they were one of the teams that could potentially win the Super Bowl. But right now, until we kind of see what that counter is, it's going to be tough to see them there.